And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, Meteorologist Joel Curtis with your aviation weather. Forecast issued Friday, April 11th. A really cold upper level low has moved into the southern Bering Sea, and it's going to eventually move into the Gulf of Alaska. And this system is causing some real challenges today for flying. So let's dig into it. Okay, for Saturday morning, we got extensive IFR along the north slope with marginal VFR elsewhere, some marginal VFR into the Brooks Range and into the central interior, some IFR into Kotzebue Sound and the north end of the Seward Peninsula, as well as much of the western and northern Alaska Range. Also some IFR moving up to the southwest coast, marginal VFR all across the Bering Sea. Some IFR down south of the Alaska Peninsula and in the southern port, and then plenty of IFR along the Gulf Coast and the higher terrain in southeast Alaska, and marginal VFR elsewhere. For Saturday afternoon, IFR continues along much of the north slope, marginal VFR all the way down to about the middle half of the state. And then plenty of IFR along the Gulf Coast, including the eastern part of the Kenai Peninsula, on up into Cook Inlet. We also have marginal VFR elsewhere, also the Alaska Peninsula, IFR, and southwestern Alaska, including Bristol Bay, and then plenty of marginal VFR all across the Bering Sea. Then as we get into Sunday, more IFR along the north slope. It's been pretty foggy up there in a lot of places. We've got marginal VFR for much of northern Alaska, also IFR into Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula, and also a little bit inland now too. And then plenty of IFR along the Gulf Coast, all across southeast Alaska, Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula and the Alaska Range, IFR into Bristol Bay and down onto the Alaska Peninsula, as well as out in the western Aleutians. And then for the afternoon, plenty of IFR still in the eastern Bering Sea, a little bit along the north slope, mostly marginal VFR up there, and then extensive IFR all along the Gulf Coast on into Cook Inlet and all of southeast Alaska, and then some out in the western Aleutians. So for our passes now, many of our passes are going to have some turbulence. The two passes, Anaktuvik and Adigan, are going to have some turbulence in the morning, and they're going from IFR to marginal VFR in the afternoon. And then for Lake Clark and Miracle Pass, plenty of turbulence. It's going to be some isolated severe in there, and IFR for both passes. Also turbulence for Rainy Pass and IFR, Windy Pass, IFR and turbulence. Isabel Pass, marginal VFR is going to be breaking up a little bit in the afternoon, so you might get some VFR there. For Mentasta Pass, VFR, that's the one really out of the action there. And then for Tahiti Pass, expecting again some turbulence there, marginal VFR becoming IFR. And then for Portage Pass, expecting IFR all day, turbulence and low-level wind shear. And then for Chilkoot and White Pass, IFR and turbulence. So here's our freezing levels again. I said the same thing yesterday, but this is just really amazing to me how cold it is this particular April. So look at the freezing level early in the morning there. We've got just almost the entire state, just a little bit of southeast Alaska has got above freezing. And then look at where the warm air is, down south of the Gulf of Alaska. So it's in that weather system that's going to be down there. The problem is it's not much moving up. So that sets up our icing. So first of all, over the central interior and up into the Brooks Range, we've got one area of considerable moderate along the middle to upper Yukon River, and that's 2,000 to 8,000 feet, and then isolated moderate elsewhere, Allen out into the Chukchi Sea. a large swath of considerable moderate from southwestern Alaska down across the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Lower Cook Inlet, and all the way around the Gulf. That'll be 4,000 to 14,000 feet. And except for one little area down there in the Aleutians where it'll be 2,000 to 10,000 feet, isolated moderate. And then also a one patch of considerable moderate out there just north of the far western Aleutians. So that sets up our winds. We've got a southwesterly to westerly jet going across Dixon Entrance, about 110 knots. Otherwise, you see some southerly winds ramping up through Bristol Bay, and then they make that anticyclonic, like high pressure ridge curvature going into northwest Canada or so, roughly anywhere from about 60 to 75 knots. Then the northerlies on the backside of this cold system I've been talking about, they ramp up to 110 knots after they cross the Aleutians. So we'll be on the lookout for that at very high levels. But our 9,000 foot winds are considerable. We've got 70 knot northerlies under that northerly jet, and that's going into the central Aleutians, and then circulating around that low that's moving down. And then we have some southerlies out in the Gulf. But the big story here is 60 knot of wind, anywhere from southeast to maybe easterly, but going through Kennedy Entrance and hitting the southern part of the Alaska Range. And that's something that we got to look out for, because what I did was I edited the model winds for 3,000 feet on Saturday. First of all, 35 knots along the north slope, southeasterlies. That's the polar easterlies that are really persistent even at this time of year. But then I've got 30 knots over the Brooks Range generally in the morning. And so that's what's causing the turbulence I put in for the passes up there. But now notice that I also edited in at least 30 knots for much of the Alaska Range and some of the Talkeetnas as well. And that's what's going to set up some turbulence there, as well as a very strong low-level jet at 3,000 feet, 65 knots, generally easterly, maybe a little bit of southerly component on some of it, but going right through Kennedy Entrance from about Middleton Island and then across Lake Iliamna on into the upper Bristol Bay area. And then also we've got some 50 knotters out of the south on the southern side of that low, and then 55 knot northerlies crossing just west of Dutch Harbor or so, but generally in the middle of Aleutians. So this is our turbulence forecast, and this is going to be formidable for tomorrow. First of all, a little bit of turbulence in the north, surface of about 4,000 feet, isolated moderate. Also for Chilkoot and White Pass, surface to about 6,000 feet with some considerable moderate in that area. But now let's talk about the big swath that's going to include some isolated severe going through Kennedy Entrance and right across Lake Iliamna area. And that is going to be surface to 12,000 feet. So again, some isolated severe right in that area, plenty of considerable moderate all across south central Alaska, down the peninsula and out into the Aleutians. Oh, and that northerly jet I talked about, also giving some isolated severe as you get into the Nikolsky area. So all of our flights in there should really be aware of a lot of turbulence on Saturday. So that's it for your aviation forecast. Thanks for tuning in. I want everybody to file a flight plan. Please get updates in the morning as you get ready to fly because of this formidable weather that we have here, and do fly safe out there. Thank you.